and you have received classes on it through online platform. As a part of it, we have arranged 4 external classes by eminent speakers from various streams. Today we have the first session by the guest speaker. Let us start today's program by invoking God's almighty blessings. Spiritual care aims to support patients to maintain meaning in their lives, particularly during times of injury or illness. Appropriate spiritual care interventions can promote patients' well-being and to redefine their life's view and to achieve a sense of fulfillment. Nurses have an important role in identifying the spiritual needs of patients and implementing appropriate spiritual care interventions using clinical reasoning and the nursing process, which originates from a therapeutic relationship between the nurse and the patient. So, today Reverend Father Martin Kallungal will be talking to us about how important is spirituality in this secular world. Reverend Father Martin Kallungal, belonging to the Archdiocese of Ernakulam-Angamaly, has secured a master's and doctorate in philosophy from MG University, Kottayam. He also took a master's and doctorate in theology from University of Leuven, Belgium. Now he is serving as a faculty of philosophy and theology in St. Joseph Mangalapuzha Seminary, Aluva. I welcome Father Martin to speak to us. Over to you, Father. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sister, for your good words. And my dear younger sisters and brothers, I'm really very pleased to be with you, especially in these days of COVID pandemic. I have been really looking forward to such an opportunity to meet with people who are in the forefront of healthcare ministry, because you are the heroes of the time. And for more than a year, and we don't know how long more, the whole world is counting on you. And I want to, honestly appreciate and heartily congratulate all of you for the wonderful and committed service that you are rendering to the whole world and to the people who come near to you. So I thank in a very special way all of you in the name of everyone like me and others around here, because we really appreciate, and I honestly say you are the heroes of the time. So your choice of profession and your commitment in life and studies and service is what keeping the world as it is for the moment. And on a very personal note, I thank Dr. Bindu and for arranging and contacting me about this talk and the good words of sister. And let us start with the wonderful question that we have today. You know, the topic for today's session is how important is spirituality in this secular world. Uh, in most simple words, and the straightforward answer to this pertinent question is this: the secular world has a sickness which spirituality alone can cure. The secular world has a sickness which spirituality alone can cure. We have other elements, factors that contribute to the cure and so on, but at the same time, there is something that spirituality alone can fill it. And that's why spirituality is very important today. I will explain in the course of this lecture what is that and why is that so. Let's start with, maybe, I don't know, I heard from the introduction, it is this year that in the School of Nursing that you have added this component of spirituality. So I cannot take it for granted that everybody is familiar with this term spirituality, although that is a very familiar word in our ordinary English and ordinary life. But I don't know whether we have given serious thoughts about what spirituality is. Now, spirituality is a feeling, primarily a feeling or a conviction that there is something more or greater than myself. See, uh, one thing that we are all aware of is that about ourselves. Nobody doubts the existence of ours. I know that I exist because I am talking to you, and I am concerned about this. Similarly, you are also, those of you who are earnestly attending, cannot ignore or doubt the fact that you exist. So we are all aware of ourselves. After a while, some of you feel bored. Then also we become aware of the fact that I feel bored. We have to underline the word I. I feel hungry. I feel sleepy. I like this. I don't like this. And all the time, the center of all these experiences is I. So the sense of I. And no one needs to interfere with me to tell that you need this. Of course, there are certain things that people remind us that you need this and so. But normally, we are aware of ourselves and we are very keen on our needs. By practice and by routine practice, we will be fulfilling all of them. But then what spirituality is a feeling. It's a conviction. Slowly that feeling becomes a conviction that I am more than this. I am more than myself. Or, something more is there to my existence. There is something more to my sensory experience. I see certain things, I feel certain things, I hear certain things, then no, there is something more to that. Whenever we are, alerted to this more, this greater, this additional aspect in our life, the realities around us, that's an indication that we are on the threshold of spirituality. Or to put it more, simple words, you are beginning to be spiritual when you feel that I am part of a greater whole. I am somebody, of course, but at the same time, there is a greater whole of which I am a part. If I think that I am the world, no, and there isn't anything outside this universe that I and my needs, or at best, my dear ones, my near ones, then we are not that spiritual. We are just normal human beings. One becomes really spiritual when one thinks that I am part of a greater whole. I hope this point is clear to you, because this is how we can, in a very simple way, enter into what we call spirituality. So the question that we are asking today is, why spirituality is important in this secular world? What is special about this secular world? The secular world, as we said, everybody is concerned about themselves. Each one, I have my business, and everybody's business is nobody's business, and someone else's business is his business or her business. This is my world, and here I am the king, I am the center. And even in a pathological sense, some people even think that everyone else and the whole world is there to serve me. These are the opposites of spiritual minds. Now, if we are really spiritual, where we think that we are part of a greater whole, and there is something more in myself, there is something more or greater in this world than I think or I feel, then what comes to our mind, our being, is an urge to experience that. And so the spirituality that we diagnose first as a feeling in us, or at best as a conviction, will show its presence in us in our urge to break the barriers. We feel like, breaking the barriers within you and get out of you. Each time we experience something, be it an ice cream or a good food or a conversation with a friend or visiting a place and so on, whatever we call a good experience or an experience in itself, there is this breaking out. We are breaking the usual barriers of ours. We reach out to what we want to experience. Now, just for example, I started my priestly life as an assistant parish priest in Ernakulam Cathedral. And once we had a picnic for our catechism students, we took them along with teachers and we went to Munnar. And on the way, we find some other buses coming down. And then I was thinking, what is this? Maybe we are there, we are heading towards that spot right in the morning, and we are seeing those buses coming down. So what are they doing? People in Munnar and around in Lisie and so on, they are coming to Ernakulam for a picnic, and people at Ernakulam are going to Munnar for a picnic. So what is actually the experience of outing? It's not so much about the place. It's not so much about the place or object or the other and so on. Rather, it's more about coming out of yourself. Coming out of yourself. That is what experience is. So there we come very close to what we call spirituality. Now, at the heart of spirituality is this reaching out, going out of ourselves. So if we want to check with ourselves whether we have some spiritual aptitudes, is there any tendency within me that shows that I am a spiritual person and so on? Check with yourself if you feel like going out of yourself. It could be, in the case of talking to somebody, helping out someone, seeing a new place, enjoying something beautiful, enjoying a good meal even. If you are experiencing an opposite pressure, if you feel like, closed down, then we are quite unspiritual too. So this is what I want to tell you, by way of introduction, what spirituality is. And another important point that might come to your mind at this introductory moment is what is the relationship between religion and spirituality. Uh, and you might think, are they not same? No, they are not same. Not all religious people are spiritual. And not all spiritual people are religious either. Spirituality means, as I said, is our ability to go out of ourselves, to meet with the other, and to complete the whole. It's an urge within us to, make the other or the people we meet around or the thing that we see whole. We become part of something outside of us. That is spirituality. Religion is actually formalization of spiritual experience. When you have a spiritual experience over the centuries, thanks to the work of someone or other who is really spiritual, certain aspects, certain practices, certain beliefs, certain attitudes will be formalized so that the followers may come to a similar spiritual experience. But if you don't experience that something spiritually, even when you are a religious, saying that, I believe in God. Let's say, for example, people say, I believe in God. I go to the temple, I go to the mosque, I go to the church regularly. I recite these prayers. I do these rituals. But even after having believed, even after having said all these prayers, even after having done all these rituals, if you don't feel like going out of yourself, you don't feel that urge within you to break open the doors of yourself and reach out to the other, you are not spiritual. You are not spiritual. So the secular world that we have is full of religions, traditional religions, and new age religions, a number of them. I mean, you just Google for new age religions. Every day, new forms of religions are coming out. And the traditional religions are getting, bifurcated. They have newer and newer denominations, and they quarrel among each other. Then people wonder, and people of sense would wonder, what is happening? They say that they believe in God, and we see them doing all kinds of religious rituals, but they are not willing to come out of themselves to extend a helping hand to make the world really whole, to heal the world. Religion is concerned about itself quite often. I'm not saying that all religion is doing this and all religious people are doing this either. I myself am a representative of a religion. I am a priest. I celebrate Holy Eucharist every day. I recite my personal prayers. I profess my faith. I become part of, this religious structure. But all the same, my dear friends, I should tell you very honestly, if I don't reach out to people around me, if I don't come out of myself, I am not spiritual. So I hope that point is very clear to you by now. I can definitely take your questions and clarification towards the close of this session. So take note of your questions if you have any. So let me now move on to the second point, namely, if we are religious, if you are spiritual and good, if you are religious and if you are spiritual at the same time, well and good, because in Kerala and in India, this is a deeply religious place. We can find only a handful of people who profess them to be non-believers or atheists and so on, or agnostics. But even an atheist and agnostic can also be a spiritual person. That's the beauty of it. He or she will have a different reason to, come out of his comfort zone and help out people. And we see such things being taken place in this world. And that's when the critique of religion also happens. If these people can be really spiritual, Why can't the religious people be spiritual? In India we have at least two atheistic religions. I don't know if you are aware of that. Buddhism is a great religion, it's a world religion, but it's a religion that doesn't believe in God, that doesn't believe in soul. Even without believing in God and believing in soul, they remain spiritual. Jainism, another traditional religion, they believe in souls and they believe in the ideal of ahimsa and so on and service, but at the same time, they don't believe in God too. But other religions, world religions that are present in India, like Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Parsi, Sikhism, these are all believing in God and they have very formal religious structure. So everybody without exception in this world, that's my point, everybody without exception, if you're a human being, you can be spiritual because that is part of our being. It's a way of being. Every human being is ordained towards the other. So now, if we are spiritual in that way, we will begin to show certain characteristics, certain traits in our life. Like we will have a very positive outlook towards everything. Now, take for example, a very familiar word in these months is lockdown. I was just wondering, why are we so particular about the word lockdown? Why don't we say lock up? Lock up. That also gives the same meaning. The world is slowly becoming very unspiritual. Even in our choice of vocabulary, in our evaluations, in our assessment of things, in our first impressions about things, we are becoming slowly unspiritual. Or how do we say the door is half closed or half open? You could say it is half open, but you say part of it is closed. The glass is half filled or half empty. So if we are spiritual, this spirituality will show itself up in very positive attitudes, approaches, and thoughts, words, and so on. Recently, I read a very brief note in someone's blog. He said, he found all of a sudden in his garden a papaya plant is coming up. And he noticed that he did not plant it. He was gardening and he was planting many other things, but this papaya plant, it came on its own. So he could see that, maybe it was deposited there by one bird. And then he started watering that along with other plants. Then it grew and it gave many papayas, very tasty, beautiful papaya. And what he did is, whenever he took these papaya fruits, he left some of them on the papaya tree. That's for birds. That's for animals. And when he sees, this ripe papaya fruit being enjoyed by birds, he feels happy. I think this is a sign of spirituality. How we look at the world, or my dear friends, take today. Now it is 6:30. I hope you all got up. Latest by 6:30 in the morning, or even later or earlier. That means more than 12 hours over this day. Have you seen anything beautiful today? If you have seen anything beautiful today, and you thought, oh, come on, wow, it's beautiful. This is fantastic. This is wonderful. If you could appreciate somebody doing something to you, saying, wow, this is so gracious of you, I would tell you that you are already a spiritual person. You have the talent of being a spiritual person. Spirituality is slowly evolving within you. And we are all working, and you might also have been working, either attending class or doing many other things. One thing we have to ask, but do you enjoy your work? Of course, there were many hardships, many confrontations, difficult tasks. But did you enjoy your work? If you could, you are already evolving as a spiritual person. Or to put a last question, could you make the people around you smile? At least one? If you could make someone else's life better today? Once again, if the answer is affirmative, you are slowly becoming a spiritual person. So, what I wanted to tell you, my dear friends, spirituality is not something that we acquire, we graft onto us. It's not something alien. It is very much part of our being. We cultivate many different aspects of ours. We cultivate our memory. We cultivate the habit of reading. We cultivate the habit of singing. Many, many, many things. But you are, as a human being, endowed with spiritual quality as well. You have the natural endowment to be spiritual. That's the first thing we want to keep in mind. Let me now move to the second point I want to share with you today, namely how spirituality is related to your profession and the work that you are doing, especially the healthcare scenario. Now, let's look at what is happening in the hospital. What is the focus of very many different activities? Of course, right from the moment of your studies here, I think mostly we focus on cure. People come to the hospital uh, primarily for cure of one or another sickness. But at the same time, the umbrella term that covers all that we do is health care. Have you noticed the difference between the term and the relationship between the terms cure and care? You know, cure is something that is technical. You have a sickness, you have a problem, you fix it, and it is cured. And that works with, the scientific process. I mean, the process that is happening in the micro level and so on. We don't know. I mean, we give medicine. Of course, the scientists do know. Of course, you also come to know that. But on the surface, the overarching activity that we are all involved in is that of care. So we have to underline that word care. And among care and cure and similar words, care is organically linked to spirituality. We can care for a person to the extent we are spiritual. The extent we are spiritual. Of course, you can purchase care for a period of time. For a period of time. And they care for you that particular period of time. Spirituality is, something that is naturally flowing out of you, and that will express itself when it concerns people, nature, and other things as care. So, care is closely related to spirituality. Cure is related to science. So, if you make a very broad distinction, this is not a differentiation. As I told you right at the beginning of this second point, they are all related. We have to, involve in this work of curing people with care, no doubt about it. But at the same time, we have to also see the distinction. As nurses, we have to pay more attention to, and put more of our energy in care. In care, of course, we have to be very meticulous in our service in terms of cure, but at the same time, what makes your life really enjoyable for yourself, and you will also actualize your spiritual potential within you when you involve carefully, not in the usual term ശ്രദ്ധ എന്ന അർത്ഥത്തിലല്ല ഞാൻ പറയുന്നത്, carefully, with full of care. So care is another word for being spiritual. A person who is spiritual cares for others, be it a human person, an animal, nature, whatever. A spiritual person will care for the other. Other means other than me. Even if I lack something, I will care for the other. That comes from the depth of spirituality. And this is not something that we borrow or acquire from outside, but that is there deep in our being. We only need to cultivate this habit of caring and so on. You know, earlier times, in the beginning, uh, healthcare was very much related to spirituality. I don't know if you are familiar with the traditional healthcare practices and so on. All of them invariably, be it in India or any other continent, indigenous healthcare systems are all related to spirituality. But in the course of secularization that happened in the history, there was what we call a separation, mutual alienation of spirituality and healthcare. Now, this can be brought back in the person of a caretaker, be it a doctor or a nurse or anyone. So only when we who are involved in the healthcare today realize our spiritual potential, the original symbiosis come back. The original unity would come back. So earlier we used to, consider a person who is sick not only as having a physical problem, but having a spiritual problem, a mental, a psychological problem, a social problem. And the doctors used to, attend to all of them. Now, in this secular world of specializations, we don't have time for this. Of course, we cannot expect a doctor who is specialized in something or other to care for the whole person, but a nurse can. A nurse can. I myself have been, admitted in hospitals a couple of times in my memory, and the doctors had been very kind to me, of course, and yet the place that I give to the nurses who took care of me is still greater or warmer, because they took care of the whole person, not just that particular sickness. So the way you deal with the person, the way you listen to the person, the way you administer one or another medicine to that person, the way you communicate what the doctor has asked you to communicate to that person, the way you fill in the person with hope, saying that it's okay, it will be fine, the way you console, the way you stand by, the smile that you give, just a look that you give, these are all very important. These are the moments when the spirituality within you overflow. The spirituality will not overflow all the time. It will get activated and overflow from you only when a person in need is near you. A person in need is near you. So what happens then? Spirituality of care asks us to be compassionate. You know, the word compassion that comes from two Latin words, compassio. Literally it means to suffer with. To suffer with. So who is a compassionate person? A compassionate person is one who is willing to suffer with the other. So when I say I feel compassion for you, I am compassionate to you, Or when I say somebody is so compassionate, he is so compassionate, she is so compassionate, what does that mean? That person suffers with me. I know it's not easy for us. Maybe once in a while we feel a person in distress, a person in sickness, a person in terminal illness, and we visit. Of course, as a priest, I have visited many patients, and those are the moments I show the compassion. I stay with the person for some time. I pray for that person. Sometimes we go out of way to help with that person. I mean, day before yesterday, I visited a cousin of mine. She is rather young, but very badly affected by cancer, and nothing more to do. She is awaiting her death in the language of language of science. But then I visited her, and then she couldn't speak very well. But what I realized, she is, she was uh, looking forward to receiving Holy Communion. Holy Communion is the most important, most precious, most intimate moment of experience of God in Christianity. But due to COVID protocol, the chaplains in the hospital were not willing to give her communion. And I'm a priest, I'm a cousin, brother of this lady, and I felt for her. I just wanted to give her communion. Then I contacted the director of that hospital and other people there, and then they said, Father, this is the COVID protocol, and we are not allowed to do that. We could go there and pray for her, we could listen to her, and we could console her, but because of this protocol, we cannot do that. Then I said, okay, I am from outside. Can I do that? Then they said, on your personal risk. I said, okay, fine. And on my personal risk, I took communion and I gave to her. And the satisfaction, I don't say that she was, full of joy. Of course, she was suffering like anything, but the satisfaction that I could see in her eyes, the gratitude that she wants to, express, and the confidence that she got that there is someone suffering with me. My God is near me, and my God is inside me. Of course, this is what I can do as a priest. But my dear friends, as nurses, healthcare workers, you are privileged to meet with the most vulnerable people in this world. People who are okay, never come to the hospital. Of course, there is health tourism today. But in this period, and especially in hospitals like Lisie and so on, people don't come for health tourism. They come there with their real problems when they are vulnerable. So when you meet with people with vulnerability, can you suffer with them? I'm not asking you to, get contaminated, to feel with. That happens inside the heart, not in our expressions. In your very being, in your very heart, if you feel with the other, that is an actualization of your spiritual potential. That's an actualization of your spiritual, because you are deeply spiritual. If you enjoy ice cream, you are spiritual. If you get out of your room and enjoy the nature, you are spiritual. If you talk to somebody once, at least once in your lifetime, that shows that you are spiritual. That means you have an urge to get out of yourself. That is the preliminary stage of being spiritual. And the height of spirituality is compassion, that you feel with the other. So when you become partners in suffering, And as a matter of fact, I'm talking in the context of healthcare, but being spiritual is a secret of life. We all think in terms of I. This is my time. This is my resource. This is my body. This is my belongings. The moment we can talk about our own life in terms of we in the place of I, then we are slowly growing. I just remember, I did my master's in philosophy in Maharaja's College, MA philosophy, and something beautiful happened over there. I quote that incident very often whenever I give a homily at the time of marriage and so on. But I want to tell you here in the context of what does it mean to be spiritual. One of our classmates got married in the second year of PG. Uh, and then after a couple of months, he came to the classroom with a box full of laddu. And he went to the teacher and said something, and the teacher said, okay. Then he turned around to the class and said, my dear friends, I want to share with you this faith because we are pregnant. That's how he announced it. We are pregnant. That was something new for me, and we all appreciated him during the break. I said, you really grew from I to we. That shows that you are really spiritual. Now, normally and grammatically correct way of saying it is, my wife is pregnant. But this man is saying, we are pregnant. My dear friends, to be spiritual is to realize your ability to say that we are sick, we have fever. So when you approach a patient, a person, if the other person gets a feeling that this person has partnership in my life, then you don't need another certification that you are a spiritual being. See, why do we worship God? Because God is with us. Will we ever worship a God, love a God who is not with us? God is always God for us. In Christianity, we call it Emmanuel, God with us. Maybe you have heard about a great man, Viktor Frankl. He had to spend quite some time in Nazi concentration camp. He did not know whether he would survive or not, but while he was there, he also developed beautiful theories which came to be known later as logotherapy. There is something very pertinent that he has said about human beings. He said, human beings are not destroyed by suffering, but they are destroyed by suffering without meaning. Whatever be the amount of suffering, we will be able to withstand. We have the capacity to withstand. We are destroyed not by the amount of suffering, but the utter lack of meaninglessness. We don't know why we are suffering. We don't know how long we will have to suffer. We don't know what's the meaning of suffering. So, my dear friends, being spiritual is also to give meaning. We find the ultimate meaning for anything and everything in life in terms of spirituality. Once in a lifetime, we will have to, however you resist, you will have to come back to the spiritual depths of our being, our own life. So that's about, being spiritual. And spirituality becomes all the more important and urgent when people are suffering. That's why I told you this topic is very relevant for students who are trained to be nurses or anyone working in the field of healthcare, because that is where we find people who are suffering, who are coming very face to face with death, and that is where they look forward to a source beyond themselves. The help has to come from outside. Meaning has to come from outside. So everything that we do, and more than that, your very presence, the very being of yours can, transpire what we call meaning, consolation, and healing as well. I want to conclude with, the ways to develop spirituality. Spirituality has to be cultivated. I was just trying to tell you that we are all spiritual. We are naturally endowed with spirituality. But the difference among us is that how much we are spiritual, how we cultivated that. In order to cultivate spirituality, there are certain methods, like any other branch, any other aspect. We need to, find some ways to cultivate. And one of them is definitely prayer. If you are a religious person, pray. And bring in your prayer everything other than you as well. Pray for others. Cultivate the regard, a loving regard for others. And the most important thing is to meditate. At least some time, a couple of minutes every day, we must sit quiet. I know that you are all busy. I'm also busy, but at the same time, steal some time to sit alone. Find some time and consider things. Consider the way life unfolds before you. I have one example for you. Recently Pope Francis published one of his encyclicals entitled Fratelli Tutti, meaning brothers and sisters, we are all. We are all brothers and sisters. And the second chapter of that great work is talking about a parable in the gospel, namely a parable which is familiar to everyone in this world because it's such a beautiful parable, the parable of the Good Samaritan. It's a story about a man assaulted by thieves and lying injured on the wayside. Then what happens? There comes two religious people, a priest and a reader, Levite. What happens when they come close to this man lying on the wayside, injured? They just look at that person for one or another reason which they alone knew, they pass by. They don't stop and help the person. Then comes a Samaritan. What is the speciality of Samaritan? Why did Jesus put that character Samaritan there? That's because just to tell you that a person who is not religiously correct. The Jews regarded these Samaritans as religiously incorrect people because they did not believe in the correct God. They did not believe worship in the correct place. They did not believe the correct things. They don't perform the correct rituals. Such were the idea. So Samaritan means all of this. But there came a Samaritan, and when he saw this man lying on the wayside injured, he stopped. He came down from his animal and he took care of that person. He dressed him up, took him on his animal, took to an inn, and told the innkeeper, keep him here till he is healed. I need to continue my journey and take this money now and take care of him. And if you will have to spend more, I will pay it when I come back. And that way he left. Then Jesus stops the story and asks, who among these three was a good neighbor to this person? And of course, it is a Samaritan. And that's why the parable has the name, the story has the name Good Samaritan. My dear friends, let us take that in light of our topic today. I told you the world is wounded. The world is wounded by many things, not only COVID and COVID-related problems. And you are to deal with people who are suffering from different sicknesses and so on. The world that comes before you is like the wounded person. And of course, we help them because that is our profession. But the pertinent question again is, which of the persons in the story you identify with? Can you immediately identify yourself with the Samaritan? No. I think most often, if not in the context of your profession, we might behave like the priest and the Levite, the religious people who had their reasons to bypass this person. And most of the time we do that also. We are very indifferent to people who are suffering. But even in the context of our profession, where we are supposed to help, we have two options: to be like the Samaritan or to be like the innkeeper. What did the innkeeper do? He received money from the Samaritan and took care of that person. And of course, in their conversation, this innkeeper might have known that this man had nothing to do with this stranger. And if you helped him thus far, why can't I help him what is remaining? He did not think that. He received the money and he's also waiting for the remaining bill to be paid. So we have two options before us. We can render our service for the pay we receive. We can also render our service in a spiritual way. The most important thing that the Samaritan gave to the stranger who is wounded and lying on the wayside is his time and his love, his care, his compassion, and all of the things, the money, the medicine that he spent, and all of the things, these are immaterial. These are immaterial compared to, the money that we have, the money that we spend for other things. The most important thing is the mind to help. My dear friends, I am closing this session. I want to tell you or bring your attention to just one question. See, what led this Samaritan to help this person? I think it is just one thought, one question that he posed before himself. And once again, what led those priests and Levites who passed by to pass by, to ignore him? That's once again a question that they posed in their heart. The question is this: the priest and Levite who did not help had this question in their heart: what will happen to me if I stop and help that person? What will happen to me if I stop by and help that person? The answer immediately comes: you will have to miss your program. You will have to enter into all the risks involved. You don't know whether he is dead or not. You don't know what all things you will have to spend. So you are jumping into uncertainty. You are jumping into problems. Then the second person, the Samaritan, asked a question himself. And the question was different. His question was this: what will happen to that person if I don't stop by and help? What will happen to that person? The priest and Levite asked, what will happen to me if I stop? The Samaritan asked, what will happen to him if I don't stop by? My dear friends, this is what makes a person spiritual. The priest and Levites, they are religious but not spiritual, because they did not think of the other. They thought only about themselves. What will happen to me if I do this? A spiritual person will ask, what will happen to the other if I don't do this? So you should actually ask yourself, just as I must also do, what will happen to the other if I don't smile at him or her? What will happen to this person if I don't greet him or her? What will happen to the other if I don't say a word of consolation to that person? What will happen to the other if I don't go out of my comfort zone to help out that person? If we can rephrase all our questions in terms of the other and the need of the other, that moment we become spiritual. And this is what the secular world today wants most. With these words, I conclude. I don't know if time permits, and if you have got time, and if you have questions or clarifications, you can take that for another 5 or 10 minutes if you want. Otherwise, we shall close the session. Once again, thank you for your patient listening. I don't know if I made myself clear. I'm not very handy with talking in front of a camera. We could have communicated but in a better way if we could meet in person, but which is not possible today. So we do whatever that is possible for us at the moment. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Bindu, and thank you, sister, and thanks everyone.
Thank you, Father. You have any queries, you can ask. If you have any queries, you can put in the chat box. Father, എല്ലാം ക്ലിയർ ആയി തോന്നുന്നു, ചോദ്യങ്ങളൊന്നും ഇല്ല.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So can I leave?
Please wait, Father. Please wait.
Good evening to all. Very respected Chief Guest, Reverend Father Martin Kallungal, colleagues of Lisie Management, teachers and dear friends. Wholeheartedly, I am here to thank you, respected Father Martin Kallungal, for sharing many more about the Savior and the role of spirituality in nursing. We will try to cultivate all the advices given by you in our daily life. I also thank our Lisie management and all spiritual coordinators for arranging the session for us in this crucial days of pandemic. In a different way, I think hearing a spiritual class through a Zoom platform is a different experience for all of us. Also, thank you all for being attentive. Once again, thanking you, Father, for being with us. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Father, finished. We can leave.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.